Welcome in. It's fantastic to have you joining us today.
Yeah, really great to be here.
We have a really thought-provoking deep dive lined up for you today. One that it might just change the way you look at some of the oldest, most stubborn frustrations in your life.
Absolutely. It's a heavy one, but in a good way.
Right. We are going to be exploring a fascinating excerpt from a talk by Bob Proctor. It's titled The Law of Forgiveness: The Path to Spiritual Liberation.
Which is a title that really sets a specific expectation.
It does, because when you hear a title with the words forgiveness and, spiritual liberation, it is incredibly easy to assume we are setting up for a purely philosophical or maybe a strictly moral
Yeah,
discussion.
like a sermon, almost.
Exactly. But the mission of today's deep dive is to unpack something much more profound and far more practical. We're looking at a text that argues letting go of past grievances isn't just a nice moral cliche.
Or something you do just to be the bigger person.
Right. According to the source material today, it is an absolute mechanical, physical, and spiritual law that literally dictates whether we succeed or fail in our day-to-day lives.
That is the core premise, and it's a huge shift in perspective. What makes this material so compelling for you as a listener is that it takes a concept we all assume we understand: forgiveness.
We all think we know what that means.
Right, but this text strips away all of the sentimentality. It completely removes the emotional fluff. Instead, the text looks at forgiveness through the cold, hard lens of cause and effect.
Cause and effect, I love that.
It frames the discussion around energy, the physical body, and the very real, tangible consequences of holding on to mental baggage. It forces us to look at what is actually happening to our nervous system and our reality when we refuse to let something go.
And to set the stage for how real those consequences are, the source text hits us right out of the gate with this staggering scientific claim.
It really catches your attention.
It does. The speaker points out that 90% of all the scientists who have ever lived are alive today. We are living in an era of just unprecedented scientific understanding and observation.
The sheer volume of data we have now is wild.
Right? And according to the text, these scientists universally accept a massive truth. The human body is moved by the mind. Every single function of your physical body is governed by what the source calls a ruling thought.
Which is such a fascinating phrase, a ruling thought.
Yeah.
Those who study mental processes have found the conditions of the body are created and caused by the mind. That ruling thought could be conscious and objective.
Meaning something you were actively focusing on.
Exactly. Or it could be entirely unconscious and subjective, running quietly in the background like a computer program. But either way, it is directing the physical form.
It's the boss.
It is the boss.
Mm-hmm.
And because creation in every single form is governed by laws, we have to look at what happens when those laws are broken. If the universe operates on strict laws, then misusing, inverting, or violating one of those laws inevitably results in a mistake.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this idea of violating a law leads right into how the source redefines a highly charged word.
Oh yeah, this is where it gets provocative.
That word is sin. Now, for a lot of people listening, that word carries a ton of heavy, sometimes frightening baggage. It evokes images of judgment.
Fire and brimstone.
Exactly. But the text asks us to look at it differently. According to this material, a sin isn't about eternal damnation or some cosmic punishment handed down from the clouds.
Which is a relief.
Right. The source defines it simply as a mistake. It is a mistake of misunderstanding or a misjudgment. It is simply falling short of or disobeying a law. And that could be a mechanical law or a spiritual law.
It's just an error in operation.
Exactly.
That reframing changes the entire conversation. It removes the guilt-laden, punitive definition that so many of us grew up with and replaces it with a purely functional one.
A functional definition.
Yeah, think about gravity. If you violate the law of gravity, you make a mistake, and the consequence is that you fall. Gravity isn't angry with you.
It doesn't have a vendetta against you.
Right, it's just a law. Similarly, if you violate a spiritual or mental law, you make a mistake of thought. The text notes that correction is the only method of adjusting or appeasing the law.
So you just fix the error.
Precisely. Therefore, repentance and forgiveness are framed not as begging for mercy, but as the only available tools to alter and correct that mechanical or spiritual mistake.
So it's less about being a bad person and more about operating the machinery of your life incorrectly.
That's a great way to put it.
And to illustrate how easily we get this wrong, the source includes an anecdote from the speaker's own childhood. It's about a little boy being sent to Sunday school.
a pretty universal experience for many.
Definitely. And like a lot of kids, he didn't necessarily want to be there. He went because if he didn't, his older sister would tell on him and he'd be punished.
The classic sibling threat.
Exactly. But while he was sitting there, he was taught that saying certain words or doing certain things was a sin. And the specific lesson they hammered into him was that the price of sin was death.
Which, if you put yourself in the shoes of a small, highly literal child, sounds absolutely terrifying.
It sounds like an immediate execution sentence. He was told that if he took a bite of an apple he wasn't supposed to touch, that was a sin, and the penalty was death.
So what did he do?
Well, the text notes his natural curiosity took over. He wanted to test this rule. He took a bite out of the forbidden apple. He said the word he wasn't supposed to say, and then he waited.
He waited for the lightning bolt.
Right. But nothing happened. He didn't die. He felt perfectly fine.
I love that.
So he realized right then and there that the adults teaching him this severe, rigid doctrine were clouded by their own distorted perceptions.
They were just passing down their own fears.
Exactly. They were passing down their own misunderstanding of how the world works. It wasn't that the universe was waiting to strike him down on the spot for eating an apple. It was that the adults were wrapping a very real, fundamental law in layers of fear and dogma.
But the nuance the source brings up next is really crucial. Later in life, as he started to study how the universe actually operates from a mechanical and spiritual standpoint, he realized there was a fundamental truth hidden inside that harsh Sunday school lesson.
The adults were onto something, they just misunderstood it.
Yes, they just had the definition of death wrong.
And that brings us to a very basic law of life mentioned in the text. It states that everything in the universe is either going ahead, which is to create, or it's going backwards, which is to disintegrate.
Create or disintegrate, there is no standing still.
None. You can't just pause your life.
So you're either growing or you're dying. Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the phrase "the price of sin" is death takes on a completely new practical meaning. It doesn't mean your heart suddenly stops beating, your blood stops flowing, and you drop to the floor because you made a mistake.
Right.
Death, in this context, simply means things are going backwards. You are disintegrating. If you violate the law, if you sin by making a mistake of thought or holding on to negativity, your life gets worse.
The gears start grinding.
Yes. Things do not go as well as you want them to. Your relationships suffer, your career stalls. Conversely, if you live in harmony with the law, you move ahead. You create.
So, if I'm understanding the source correctly, when you transgress the law, your life literally begins to break down. When you live in harmony with it, you build and move forward.
That is the formula.
So if disintegrating isn't just a metaphor, does the text actually point to specific things that cause this breakdown?
It does, very explicitly. The source identifies guilt and resentment as two of the most destructive emotions a human being can possibly experience. They are the primary drivers of this disintegration. When you harbor resentment or carry around deep-seated guilt, you are chronically violating the mental laws of creation. You are forcing your mind, and by extension your body, to go backward.
And the speaker in the text gets surprisingly vulnerable about this. He shares a very personal story to show just how deep this conditioning goes.
The great example.
He admits he was raised with immense guilt. It was so deeply ingrained in him that any little thing he did that he didn't think was perfectly right would cause this overwhelming, paralyzing guilt.
A lot of people listening can probably relate to that.
Oh, for sure. Now, he operated on the belief that if you had a problem you couldn't handle on your own, you should seek out a professional. So to deal with this crippling guilt, he went to see a psychiatrist in Century City down in Southern California.
The way that intervention plays out is one of the most revealing parts of the entire excerpt.
It really is. He didn't spend years on the couch. He only went to see the psychiatrist for 3 to 5 sessions.
That's incredibly fast.
Yeah. Very fast. On his way down for what would be his final session, he's reflecting on everything, and he suddenly figures out the core concept of forgiveness completely on his own.
Just sitting there in transit.
Just sitting there. He realized the mechanics of how letting go actually works, so he picked up the phone, called the doctor's office, and said, "I'm not coming in anymore. I figured it out."
Which is usually the part where a medical professional might say, well, let's have one more session just to be sure.
But the psychiatrist told him, "Come on down anyway." And the reason wasn't to treat him. The doctor said, "I like what you're doing and I want to find out more about what you're doing."
That is amazing.
Right. The patient had figured out this brilliantly simple concept of completely letting go of the guilt. And the shift was so sudden and profound that the trained psychiatrist wanted to learn the technique from him.
What's fascinating here is how this purely mental revelation, the shedding of guilt, ties directly back to our physical well-being.
It's not just in the mind.
Exactly. The source doesn't just leave it at feeling better emotionally. It brings in a hard medical perspective. The text cites a noted physician named Dr. Hollywell, who spoke before a group of medical professionals on this exact subject, thought being the underlying source of disease.
That is a bold statement to make to a room of doctors.
Very bold. In his concluding remarks to these doctors, Hollywell stated that abnormal tumors and cancers are often due to a long period of suppressed grief and anxiety.
That is a staggering claim to digest. So we aren't just talking about a headache or an upset stomach.
Huh?
We are talking about severe, life-altering cellular changes linked to suppressed grief.
It is an immense claim, but the source uses it to translate Hollywell's medical observation into the language of our discussion.
How so?
These diseases, according to the framework of the text, are essentially due to a massive accumulation of sinful thoughts. And again, remember our new definition, mistaken, resentful, or guilty thoughts.
Right, operational errors.
Exactly. When those mistaken thoughts get bottled up and suppressed within the mind over long periods, the body begins to literally disintegrate. It breaks down. This frames holding on to the past not just as an emotional burden, but as a potential catalyst for physical destruction.
That makes the stakes so incredibly high, and the source uses that medical connection to give a very direct, almost urgent piece of advice to you, the listener.
It's a call to action.
It really is. It urges you to take a moment and probe into your own self. Really observe the effect your emotions are having on your physical organism.
Pay attention to your body.
If holding on to old grievances or guilt has a debilitating, disturbing effect on your body, if it makes your chest tight, your stomach churn, or drains your energy, then you need to seek every means at your command to overcome, abandon, and forsake those feelings.
Because a lot of bad blood, as the text vividly puts it, comes straight from wrong thinking.
And if someone is wondering how exactly a thought turns into a physical symptom, the text offers a really powerful mechanical analogy to explain the transition from mind to matter.
This is one of my favorite parts of the text.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The source compares human thought to electricity.
We need to break this down carefully because it's a brilliant comparison. Think about a power grid and how electricity operates.
Okay.
We as everyday people might not even fully understand what electricity fundamentally is at a quantum level, but we know the laws by which it operates.
We flip the switch and the light comes on.
Exactly. We know how to use it. One of the primary laws is that electricity always works from a higher to a lower potential.
Let's pause there for a second. Higher to lower potential. What does that actually mean for the listener who is trying to apply this to their own brain?
Think of the source of the power as having massive, unlimited potential energy. If you want a greater flow of electricity in your house, what do?
You upgrade your equipment?
Right. You don't have to invent new electricity. The power is already there at the source. You just put in a bigger light bulb, or you install a larger transformer. The only limit placed on the electricity isn't the power plant. It is the physical form through which it is flowing. The wire, the bulb, the appliance.
So the form is the limit, not the power source itself.
Precisely. And the text argues that it's exactly the same with us as human beings. We operate from a higher to a lower potential. We move from the non-physical realm to the physical realm.
From the thought to the thing.
Exactly. We have this incredible inherent ability to tap into a non-physical world, a world of pure thought, which has unlimited potential energy. And we can choose any thought we want to flow through us into the physical world.
Yeah.
Spirit or mental energy always manifests through its polar opposite. It moves from the unseen to the seen.
Okay, so if we are the transformer in this analogy, and we are actively holding on to a deep resentment against a former boss or a family member, we are basically putting a tiny, restricted, clogged up wire into a massive electrical current.
Yes. We are the ones limiting our own flow of energy.
We are actively choking the current.
We are causing the system to short circuit, which leads to that physical disintegration we talked about earlier.
But someone might push back here and say, I can't help what I think. My circumstances are terrible, my environment is awful, so my thoughts are naturally going to be negative.
It's a very common defense.
To prove how absolute our power to choose our thoughts actually is, regardless of circumstance, the text brings up a profound historical example. Dr. Viktor Frankl.
An incredibly powerful example.
He was a Viennese psychiatrist who survived the absolute horrors of a concentration camp during World War II.
His story is perhaps the ultimate testament to this specific law of thought.
It is almost impossible to comprehend. The source notes that while Frankl was in the camp, stripped of his identity, subjected to the most extreme physical and intellectual abuse imaginable, he came to a massive, liberating realization.
In the midst of all that darkness.
Yes. He realized that no matter what his captors did to his physical body, no matter how much they controlled his environment or tortured him, no one could ever cause him to think something he didn't want to think.
They could control his surroundings completely.
But they could not control his ruling thought.
To maintain that level of mental sovereignty in an environment designed to completely break the human spirit is incredible.
It truly is.
And the text uses Frankl's realization to define a word we throw around very casually: attitude.
We usually just mean someone's mood.
Right. If someone is in a bad mood, we say they have a bad attitude. But the text defines attitude much more structurally. It says attitude is the composite of your thoughts, which cause your feelings, which then express themselves in actions.
It is a three-part chain.
Yes. When your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions are all entirely in sync, that is an attitude.
So if your ruling thought is resentment, it triggers feelings of anger, which trigger actions of hostility or withdrawal. Your whole attitude is geared toward disintegration. But if you want to live in a healthier body, you need the proper attitude. If you want to enjoy wealth and abundance, you need the proper attitude. If you want great relationships, you need the proper attitude.
Everything flows from it.
And the absolute foundation of getting that attitude right, according to the text, is the ultimate solution. Complete forgiveness. You have to forgive yourself, and you have to forgive others.
Because, as the text bluntly reminds us, you cannot change yesterday.
It is physically, mathematically impossible.
If you did something deliberately wrong 10 years ago, you have to let it go and forgive yourself. If you did something wrong accidentally yesterday, you still have to forgive yourself and let it go.
You have to clear the wire.
Right. And if someone else has done something terrible to you, you cannot afford to hold on to the resentment. The cost to your own electrical system is too high. You have to let it go.
Now, I want to make sure we mention an important caveat from the source here, because sometimes people hear the word forgiveness and they immediately think it means letting someone off the hook or putting yourself in a position to be a doormat.
A very common misconception.
If someone betrayed you, forgiving them sounds like giving them permission to do it again. But the text is very clear. Letting go of resentment does not mean you give the person an opportunity to hurt you all over again.
Not at all.
You can, and in many cases absolutely should, move far away from that person. You can cut ties, but what you cannot do is hold bad, venomous thoughts about them in your mind while simultaneously trying to move your own life in a good direction.
You can't wire a house for bright light while pouring water on the fuse box.
Perfect analogy.
That is a critical distinction that trips a lot of people up. Forgiveness, as defined mechanically here, isn't about the other person's moral ledger. It's entirely about your own internal electrical flow.
It's a self-preservation tactic.
Yes. It means to let go of completely, to abandon the thought. It doesn't mean you approve of what they did. It means you refuse to let their past actions choke your present energy.
And when that resentful thought inevitably tries to creep back into your mind, because it will, you just let it go again.
You have to form the habit of not holding on to anything that causes you to feel bad.
And the source promises some incredibly tangible real-world results from practicing this. When you actually let go, energy just flows freely to and through you.
You become a better conduit.
The speaker in the text shares his own outcome. He says he did this. He systematically forgave himself and everyone else who occupied a bad, rent-free space in his mind, and he became a remarkably happy, healthy, and wealthy guy.
The results speak for themselves.
He emphasizes that if you don't forgive, the price of that mistake is disintegration. And again, not a literal burial in a graveyard right away, but you might be burying your company.
You might be burying your income potential.
You might be burying your friendships because people subconsciously sense that restricted negative energy and they just won't want to be around you.
But the flip side is equally true. When you replace those destructive, restrictive thoughts with thoughts of beauty, of plenty, and of abundance, everything in your life grows.
Your health improves because your nervous system isn't under constant stress.
Your income grows because you are focused on creation instead of past grievances. Your business expands. It is a literal mechanical shift from disintegrating to creating.
So what does this all mean? If we step back and synthesize everything we've pulled from this source, it comes down to a very empowering reality. The law of forgiveness isn't about taking the moral high ground just so you can pat yourself on the back for being a good person.
It's far more practical than that.
It is fundamentally about dropping mental luggage so your own internal electricity can flow without resistance. It's about recognizing that guilt and resentment are literal bottlenecks in your nervous system. By abandoning those thoughts, you stop the process of disintegration and you begin to create wealth, health, and incredibly strong relationships.
And it serves as a powerful daily reminder that carrying bad thoughts about anyone or any situation literally does no one any good.
It doesn't punish the person you are mad at, it is purely destructive to you.
It limits the transformer of your own life. You have a profound responsibility to start loving yourself enough, to respect yourself enough, and to have a healthy respect for what you are capable of doing once you clear that internal resistance.
It changes everything when you realize you are the one in control of the switch. It is truly one of the most liberating laws you could ever study. You replace the bad with the good, you abandon the mistakes of the past, and you just let the energy flow forward.
This raises an important question.
Let's hear it.
If the law of life dictates that holding on to resentment forces your life to go backward and literally disintegrate, what is one old, forgotten grievance you are currently holding on to that might be the exact bottleneck burying your future success? If you completely abandon that thought today, what new reality could you create tomorrow?
Wow, that is the perfect challenging thought to leave off on. Think about that bottleneck. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We hope it gave you some powerful, practical tools to think about your own ruling thoughts, your own mental electrical flow, and the incredible life-changing power of just letting things go. Keep learning, keep abandoning those old grievances, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.